Okay, back here in Rabbi Tatz's Sefer on free will, and he has a very lengthy explanation over here. I'm skipping a few pages because it's a lengthy explanation about how all of the different biological, circumstantial, familial, culture, time that you live in, all the different things that go into making the person who they are, and either influencing their free will or making their free will very difficult, as we've been discussing up until this time. So he says the title of this part is called At the Point of Choice. He says, now that we have an account of the context in which choices must be made, let's consider the act of choice itself. And this is really going to be, I think, what the majority of the rest of the book is going to be about, is trying to understand what is actually at the core of it, what is motivating us to make the choices in life that we make. So he says that in theory we could deconstruct and fully understand what places an individual at a particular point of choice. I mean, again, he grew up in the inner city, and his mother was a crack dealer, and his father was a bandit, and he grew up with brothers that were thieves and robbers, and so what did we expect of this boy when he was faced with the opportunity to go and steal from the store at the 7-Eleven at 12 o'clock at night when nobody else is around? What were we really expecting of him? So we could try, but we can't explain, and this is where it takes it to the next level. We cannot explain, not even in theory, why he makes the particular choice that he does. Meaning, even though that we can understand what brought the person, what made him who he is, and how he got to that point, but the actual choice that he makes, that we can't really explain. Because that always remains beyond the reach of a technically casual explanation. Meaning in English over here, I think what he's going to explain is that even though if you think that you could surmise the choice that the person's going to make, and you think that you can even understand why he made the choice, there's such a function of free will that's going on inside of the person that at the end of the day, the real choice that the person makes, that's beyond our comprehension almost. And so he gives the following example. So imagine you have a woman who was just arrested. See, we do talk about the women. Yeah, imagine we have a woman who was just arrested for the 10th time for stealing candy from the candy store. She's a kleptomaniac. Now, she's intelligent, she's wealthy, she has all the candy that she needs, she has enough money if she wants to go into the store and buy whatever she wants. Yet she's got this urge that when she goes into the store, when she grabs the candy without paying for it, she gets like some happy satisfaction out of the fact that she steals the candy and doesn't have to pay for it. So she gets to court, and they put her on the stand, and they ask her, or they call her psychiatrist up for testimony, and they ask the psychiatrist, "What do you have to say about this? Why is this woman, who's a wealthy woman, a smart woman, a bright woman, intellectual woman, who has no reason to steal, why is she stealing?" So she has to testify that the psychiatrist has to testify that she understands what she's doing, and she knows that it's wrong. She's even aware of it that it's wrong, but she has a craving for this particular behavior that other people don't have. She knows it's the wrong thing to steal. If you ask her before she's stealing, should you steal? No, of course you don't steal. But what do you want from me? I've got this urge inside that gets excited and it gets piqued over here when I end up stealing. So he says the question is like this, and this is the question that's going to be before the court. Is she going to be held responsible for her actions or not held responsible? I mean, the urge to steal is presently it seems to be outside the realm of her free will, because she's got this burning desire inside of her to steal, and at the moment that she's walking through the store and she sees the candy there again, she cannot help herself. She feels an urge, she has a real craving, and it's quite possible that the origin of the problem lies outside of her range of freedom. At present, she may be unable to suppress that urge. But if the action of stealing is within the range of her free choice, and this is what the court has to decide, if the action of stealing is really within the range of her free choice, then she is going to be responsible. So how do you know? How do you know that the woman who is a certified kleptomaniac has control or doesn't have control to make a choice? As long as she remains in contact with reality in this respect, as long as she knows what's right from wrong, and as long as there is no unstoppable force moving her, she is free at her point of choice when she reaches out to take the candy bar. So meaning, even though that she's a kleptomaniac, but if she knows that it's wrong, and she knows she shouldn't be doing it, and as she's reaching out her hand, the voice is still telling in her head, don't do it, but I can't control myself, so then she's really in control of her choice. So he writes like this: what she chooses at this point, whether she steals or not, is really her responsibility. Whether she yields to the pressure of her nature or rises to control it is her test, and this is her expression of her free will. So we cannot absolve, and this is what he was pointing out before, we cannot absolve people because they do the wrong thing and they claim they had no choice. Who says you had no choice? How can you be certain that you have no choice at all? Meaning the mechanics of free will is so deeply enmeshed in the psyche of a human being that for a person to say that I didn't have a choice whether or not I want to do this, look at this week's Parsha. This is the Parsha of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef is called Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous one, because of this week's Parsha. You have a man who was thrown into a pit. His brothers all turned their back on him. They threw him into the pit. They took his coat that his father gave them. They claimed him as being dead. They sell him as a slave. Yosef he's the righteous man of the generation. He's his father's favorite son, seemingly. He goes from the glory into the pit of destruction. He's in a pit which is filled with snakes and scorpions. Then he gets whisked out only to be sold to Arabs who take him down, and he ends up being a slave in the house of Potiphar, who was like, let's say, one of the rulers over there in Egypt. So you went from being the greatest person in the world to within moments you become a slave. And then you have a woman, the wife of Potiphar, who lays eyes on you, and she tries day and night to seduce you that you should have relations with her. So you're far away from home. You've been sold as a slave. You have no support around you. You're broken. You're brokenhearted. You're destitute. You're all by yourself. You have no support system. You have this beautiful woman who is luring herself in front of you all day long. She plans that the day that everybody leaves the palace, she stays in the palace and plays sick, and who knows what she was wearing or what clothes she wasn't wearing that day. And she comes to you and says, come. No one knows. No one's going to see. No one's around here. You're a nice, attractive young man. You're away from home. You're so lonely. Come be with me. And Yosef is this close to committing the crime. He's this close to having illicit relation with this woman. This close. Until at the very, very last second, whatever the reason is, at the very, very last second, he changes his mind and he pulls himself away from this woman and he runs out and he saves his life. So you can give a great argument of why it is that if he would have had relation with this woman, why we would have no complaints against Yosef. What do you expect from the man? But the answer is that in all of the predicaments that a person finds themselves in, and as much as it might lend itself in one direction, the mechanics of free will are so deeply imbued inside of a person, how can you say, I have no free will? There's always a chance that you could find a strength that's inside of yourself that you never knew that you had before, and you can make a decision that you, under the circumstances, you wouldn't make, but if you pull yourself out of that, you would make. And that's what he's saying over here, that this woman is a kleptomaniac. You still have free will, and you can still control yourself. And therefore, if she overcomes that urge, at one particular place, she's in the store, she's about to take the Snickers bar, and she says, am I a fool? I have money in my pocket, I can pay for it, what am I doing? So she controls herself. When she overcomes the urge, she automatically grows. Every time that a person overcomes the urges to do the wrong thing, automatically they grow. Now he writes he says like this, that even though that other individuals will look at it and say, "What? That's called a test? You walk into the store and you don't steal the candy bar, that's called a test?" Meaning, I would never do such a thing. Yes, for you it's not a test, because you're not pre-wired or live-wired like a kleptomaniac. So for her, she grows. For you, if you do such a thing, there's no growth. Now he says, a human court cannot measure the effort that is required to overcome a particular test. That's an interpersonal matter. The judge sitting on the bench doesn't look at the person and say, "Oh wow, you did kleptomania 9 out of 10 times. So, but the 10th time that you didn't do it, so you know what? We should rescind all of your cases over here, because look how much you grew." The judge doesn't look at it like that. Rather, whatever growth a person makes is the real interpersonal matter of who they are. And the human court applies a uniform standard, but the individual themselves, the spiritual growth or fall will be very different. Each one's inner reality will have changed in proportion to the difficulty he experienced in dealing with the test. That's what we've been saying the entire time. The more challenging the test is that you have to overcome, the more they have to pull out the free will choice inside of you to do the right thing, so the greater that you are going to become. You could have two people that are confronted with the same exact challenge. One person grows exponentially, the other person is not a big deal. Because you have two people that are on the 101 freeway, and the traffic is annoying beyond belief, and one person, nothing bothers him. So he's driving along, he'll take time, he'll call his kids, he'll listen to some kind of program that he didn't get to listen to for a while, he'll just, put the car into park and he'll close his eyes for a minute and take a deep breath and relax. And there's another guy right next to him, he's going crazy. He's foaming at the mouth. He's going crazy that there's so much traffic. And how did he get stuck in it? Why did I come to... So if the guy over there who's foaming at the mouth decides to control his anger, and he says, "You know what, I'll just take advantage of the time that I have over here. I'm going to listen to my favorite CD. Or I'm going to listen to that station that I like to listen to. I'll listen to some talk radio, whatever it is, or I'm going to call my wife. We didn't speak, so I'll call my wife. We'll have a nice conversation for the next 45 minutes while I'm stuck in traffic." So that man gets so much reward, as opposed to the guy that's in the car next to him, that's how his modus operandi, that's the way that he functions anyway. So that's what it's going to boil down to. This free will that a person has is going to be based upon the person, not upon the scenario that's in front of them. It's upon the choices that the person has to make from the inside out. Okay, we'll continue next time.